He's fighting for our rights to label GMO. The best way to fight for our rights to label GMO, Tom, is to stop using it yourself. That's the best way to fight for it. So technically, McDonald's can claim, technically here, follow me through on this. McDonald's can claim that their beef comes from family farms because Tyson contracts with 7,000 family farms. Tyson is not a beef. Hello, Chef Marcus Guiliano here. I'm your chef on a mission. Today's on a mission is more farm-to-table fraud. It's amazing what restaurants say. I was out a lot this last week eating at some local restaurants, and one restaurant was saying on their menu, oh, we buy local produce when it's in season. We're farm-to-table and we buy from X farm. So I asked the person, I said, wow, you guys are buying in the wintertime from them? No. I said, when was the last time you got from them? He goes, oh, I haven't seen that delivery here in a long time. I'm like, but yet you're putting your farm to table on your menu and you're saying all your produce comes from this farm. So, and the farm's not a winter growing farm. They have no greenhouses. They're not producing in the wintertime. Again, people believe this kind of stuff. And it's even worse when celebrity chefs do it. When they just lie about their menu. I recently read about how Tom Colicchio, how he's really, what was it, an interview he did, how he feels like betrayed and everything when other restaurants mislead about what's on their menu, and how he is really tight in him. He doesn't do it. I'm not sure if those are the exact words or whatever, but he doesn't like when other people do it. So I was looking on his website, on his craft steak from Las Vegas. Let's back up one step. A couple years ago, I did a video on McDonald's. Where does the McDonald's beef come from? Because if you remember 3, 4, 5 years ago, McDonald's had a picture of a guy out on a farm, probably a piece of straw in his mouth, cattle in the pasture, and McDonald's was like, "This is where our beef comes from farms like this," you know. And I'm like, that is so deceptive. They're like, family farms raises our beef. I said, that's so deceptive. So I got the guy's name from the video. I saw it on YouTube later. I saw it on the McDonald's site. I saw it. I called the guy, and he didn't want to talk to me. He was like, I can't talk about my McDonald's. And I'm like, I don't want you to talk about your McDonald's thing. I want you to talk about your farm. And I threw a line up like, I'm doing this for an educational purposes. I have students, which I do. You're my students. The people watching this, I consider you my students. We're learning. I'm teaching. So I said, I have students that I want to bring this back into the classroom. YouTube's our classroom, and I want to explain the productions of beef. And I started rattling off. I said, you know, there's a caver, there's a mid-feeder, there's a finisher, there's a packer, there's a brander. I listed off all like 7 levels of beef, and I go, where do you fall in? And he goes, oh, well, we're just a mid-grower. We just put them out on grass pastures, feed them as little as possible, and then when they go off to auction or they go off to a feedlot, they go to Tyson. I was like, they go to Tyson. I said, your cattle go to Tyson? He goes, yeah, we sell all of our cattle to Tyson. I said, so your beef might not even end up in McDonald's. He's like, well, I don't even really know if it ends up in McDonald's. He goes, our beef goes to Tyson. McDonald's buys their beef from Tyson. Our cattle aren't segregated. It's all part of the Tyson production. Tyson has like 7,000 farms they contract from. So technically, McDonald's can claim, technically here, follow me through on this. McDonald's can claim that their beef comes from family farms because Tyson contracts with 7,000 family farms. Tyson is not a beef. So technically, McDonald's can claim, technically here, follow me through on this. McDonald's can claim that their beef comes from family farms because Tyson contracts with 7,000 family farms. Tyson is not a beef grower. All Tyson does is just finish them in their feedlots. So they let the other guys do them, the family farms, do the first couple steps, calve them, feed them on grass, let them roam the pastures. But then they get shipped to a feedlot, fattened up into the Tyson feedlot, fattened up. Tyson owns them now, and they get mixed together with all this beef, and bam, 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 you got Tyson beef. But technically, Tyson buys from small family farms. So, isn't McDonald's beef all family farmed? You could say that. But if you say it's coming from Tyson, that's the total last thing you want to hear is, oh, the McDonald's beef comes from Tyson. Tyson's not a family farm. Tyson's a massive corporation. They own the meat market. They own the poultry market. They're It's a very scandalous industry, the beef industry, and these guys, you know, these guys are the top of the scandals and everything, and the corruption and the animal abuse. Tyson's not a good company. You'd never want to buy your beef from Tyson. So I go into Tom Colicchio's website, Craft Steak, and here it says, it opens up. Top chef personality and James Beard award-winning chef Tom Colicchio uses only, it says, the finest ingredients to create dishes bursting with flavor. Many items feature ingredients from small family farms, artisanal producers, dayboat fishermen, prepared to capture the true flavor and essence of each dish. Who wrote that? Did Tom Colicchio himself, did Chef Tom Colicchio write that? People read this stuff. They read this stuff and they're like, I'm eating pure food, I'm eating natural food, I'm eating food from the farm. They read this kind of stuff and they believe it. And especially when Tom Colicchio's stamp is on this. It's right here, it's right here. When Tom Colicchio's stamp is on this, they believe it. Because Tom Colicchio is a celebrity chef and he's fighting for our right to label GMOs and he's very active about all this stuff. So why just not believe Tom Colicchio? So I look at his menu. First thing I see, salmon. So I call the restaurant. Of course, it transfers me through the MGM Grand thing, and you can't get anybody. I figured a way out to get the number to the actual restaurant. Call the restaurant. Somebody answers the phone. Say, yeah, want to find out a little bit about your menu. Where's your salmon from? Well, it's farmed Scottish salmon. It's like, it's farmed salmon. What happened to that thing about our fish come from day boats? Farmed salmon's not day boat. Now, Tom might be sitting back saying, well, we buy from the place that's certified, or a better choice from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. If you believed what that crap that Monterey Bay Aquarium says about sustainable choices, that stuff in the last 5 years, 10 years, is pathetic what Monterey Bay Aquarium has done to a lot of the industry. First of all, it's like the Martha Stewart and Rick Moon endorsing True North salmon out of the Gulf of Maine, out of New Brunswick, out of up there. Martha Stewart went and looked at the outside of the farm and said, oh, it looks great, this and that. She didn't stick her head in. She didn't see what was going on underneath. Now, Monterey Bay Aquarium, if you go on their website, they say, okay, yeah, there's one place in Scotland where the farms are a little more better than average. It didn't say what they were feeding them. It didn't say the antibiotics. It just said there's less lice. There's less sea lice in that area. First of all, they didn't mention anything about bumping. I don't know if even Tom Colicchio knows about bumping, when you bump a salmon farm. Bumping salmon farms is when the holes in the net so the fish don't swim through them. They're smaller holes. They get covered with shellfish or clams. They cover in mussels. They get covered with mussels and algae. And so the salmon feces can't escape into the ocean like it's supposed to and just create a dead zone in the ocean. It can't create that dead zone. It creates a dead zone inside the salmon nets in the open pens. And what happens is a gas bubble captures in there, and there's a layer of sludge and slime and feces and stuff that sits on the top, and the gas bubble sits in there and starts expanding, and the salmon farm rises out of the ocean, and the workers have to go there and dig away at this and pull it out and let the gas out so the salmon farm can settle. So Monterey Bay Aquarium didn't mention anything about the salmon farm not needing to be bumped. They didn't mention what was in the food at all. First of all, in Scotland, England, the UK, it's legal, and even in Canada, put chicken parts and pork parts into the fish pellets, and it's a different proprietary mixture every year because they're not sure what they're going to catch. Because for salmon farms, you have to go to other countries like Peru and harvest the anchovy population, pelletize it, put it into pellet form, load it with tons of fat, put a fake antioxidant in there that you would get naturally in krill. The salmon would get naturally in krill. So that anataxanthin, I always pronounce it wrong, has to be made from petrol, from the petrol industry, and it's not a natural antioxidant anymore. They have to put ethoquinone. You think it's some harsh chemical. It's a pesticide that's used for asphalt manufacturing that has to stabilize the fat because salmon needs a lot of fat to grow, and that's why the sea lions love salmon because they're so fatty. The sea lions will sit there and stick their hands through the nets and just sit there and like basically chew on these salmon while they're alive, and then salmon swims off and like kind of lives and it's infected in some cases. But if the sea lion's caught there in Canada, man, the farmers come out, the workers, they're not really farmers, these salmon farmers, they're not farmers, they're fish workers. They come out with the guns, bam, 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 they shoot them legally. So the salmon farms are spreading disease out into the ocean. And I have tons of videos on this. I've interviewed Alex Morton, the marine biologist. I'm interviewing more scientists and more marine biologists in the upcoming weeks. I've got a whole schedule full of people I'm interviewing on how salmon farms just decimate the environment, no matter what Monterey Bay Aquarium says, no matter what Rick Moon says, no matter what Martha Stewart says. These salmon farms are detrimental to the environment. There's no, Alex Morton told me, the marine biologist last week, that there's no place in the world where there's a salmon farm and a thriving wild salmon population. It doesn't exist. So Tom Colicchio, farm salmon for a menu that's pure and natural. The amount of chemicals that are in there, the toxins that are in there, the waste, the feces that it lives in, not a pure, natural, and a fine ingredient. I would not think that that is. Next, I look down the beef, and it's Double R Ranch. I'm like, oh, Double R Ranch, that's that agri-beef company. So, of course, sure enough, Double R Beef was acquired. It's a branch of agri-beef, who owns Snake River. They own like 3, 4, 5 different brands of beef. So I'm like, I don't know much about the logistics. Let me call them. I know Tom Colicchio doesn't like antibiotics and hormones. I know he doesn't like that. So I'm on their website and it says nothing about them avoiding it. So I call them. I want to know some questions. Because again, Tom Colicchio is using only the finest ingredients from family farms. Again, McDonald's is using those family farms too there, Tom. Just so you know. They're using those family farms that then supply Tyson, the most corrupt beef company in the world. So, or IBP might be up there too. I'm not sure where Montford is anymore. They're all just corrupt. So, call them up. It's a group of farms, right? So they're buying from farmers. They're buying from farmers just like Tyson is. They take possession of the cattle at Double R. They're processing over 7,000 cattle a week. Now, I can go to Restaurant Depot and buy Myers. Tom, you can probably do this and save some money. You can go buy Myers natural, hormone-free, antibiotic-free, grain-finished beef from Myers. They only do 1,500 head of cattle a week. Much, much, much smaller operation. But still, it's probably still going into a feedlot and getting finished. And so what Double R does, I call them, talk to them about 15, 20 minutes. They buy the beef from the small independent family farms. So they have a network of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, just like Pineland Beef does. They buy from many states. She listed off 4 states that they buy their beef from. So they buy it from this network of small family farmers, the mid-feeders. They bring them into their possession, stick them into a feedlot, and start pumping them for grains for 6 months. It's their own cattle at that point that came from wherever. This is the same stuff that IBP does, Montford, Excel. They buy from these family farms, Tyson, they buy from these family farms, they bring it to their own production facility and fatten them up and start feeding them. And she goes, well, if the animals need antibiotics, we give them antibiotics, is what she said. She didn't say a word about hormones, because I asked. She didn't say a word about hormones. So I'm looking at Tom Colicchio's menu here, and it's just like, uses only the finest ingredients to create dishes bursting with flavor. The menus feature ingredients from small family farms, artisanal producers, and day boat fishermen. So, you know what? If you're considering Double R Ranch, and there was several steaks on this menu from Double R Ranch, a family run, when you call them and there's a press this prompt, press that prompt, you ask somebody when they answer the phone, I want to talk about your beef. Oh, I have to transfer you to a salesman. If you're buying from a family farm, there's no salespeople, there's no prompt, there's no switchboard. Like you call up and Sally's answering the phone. Let me get Joe. He's out with the cattle right now. And that's a family run operation. You know, I love family-run operations. I support for a couple of my products here, but I don't put on my menu that all of my stuff, or I only buy from family farms. I put on my menu that I love family farms. I love buying local, but I'm the first person to say I'm not perfect. That I'm not perfect, but I'm willing to improve. But I have on my menu, and I can't stand restaurants that do this. They say, "Oh, we're farm to table." You know, besides this, there was another restaurant that popped up. I typed in farm to table restaurants in New York, and it came up Tom Colicchio's restaurant, Riverfront or something. And I'm looking down the menu, and it says we buy from the green market. Our menu's inspired from the green. I forgot what it said. And I'm looking at the menu, and I'm like, you got stuff from everywhere all over the world. How's stuff inspired from the green market right here? I mean, to say your menu's inspired from the green market? No, you use ingredients that are local, but what are you using? I mean, right now, we're still buying broccoli, Of course, all the storage crops, broccoli, cauliflower, bok choy, kale, all of our herbs. We're buying local tomatoes still. It's amazing. Just got our shipment of beans in again. Local dried beans from upstate New York, upstate polenta. There's so many ingredients that you can buy that aren't just produce items that can flood your menu. So on our menu, I have the little Farm Connection link on our website. Farm Connect. Here's our 45 farmers that we buy from on a mostly regular basis. And there's 2 farms that we bought from this week that were my first time buying from them because they were available through the Farm Hub. I'm like, cool, they got this product? Awesome, I'm gonna try it. One was frozen corn kernels, local frozen corn kernels I bought. Run that in the fall, in the winter time here. So the bottom line to this is that Tom Colicchio is no different than McDonald's. In his restaurant here, Craft Steak, he's buying from a big company that's buying from out on the market, whether they have relationships or not. Tyson has relationships. Purdue has relationships with their producers because they're in contracts. So yeah, that's a relationship, right? So Tom Colicchio and McDonald's are no different. They're claiming they're buying from family farms, but they're buying from these big companies. Now, Tyson's a massive company compared to R&R. There's 7,500 head of cattle, but 7,500 head of cattle a week is a large operation. Large operation. When I was in Colorado, we bought from a processing plant right down the road from us. He was doing 100 head the most a day, which is 700 head a week, which 100 head a day was a max for him. But he was more like 30, 40, 50 head. And I flooded my menu with all of his beef because he was buying right from the rancher, and the rancher was it was an awesome arrangement in Colorado that I had. But I was buying directly from a guy who was doing literally 50, 60 head a day, max 100 on a busy day. So R&R, I'm sure R&R is better than Tyson. I'm sure R&R is better than Excel. I'm sure R&R is better than some of those other big people. But R&R, 7,500 is over 7,000 is a big number. So my point here is, Tom Colicchio, salmon's not day boat. Salmon's a toxic product no matter where it's coming from. The beef coming from R&R, there's no really special claims from it. You can do better if you buy, like I said, go to Restaurant Depot and buy Myers natural beef. 1,500 head a week, that's it. Much smaller operation, dwarfs the size of that. And of course, R&R is better than Tyson and Montfort and Excel, so Tom's got something on there. But you know, Tom Colicchio, the reason why I'm picking on him, because a couple of years ago, he, back in 2009, 2010, yeah, it's been 8 years. I went into one of his restaurants and they were saying one of the beefs was grass-fed, and I said, no, it's not. I'm looking down their menu, they have a whole section of grass-fed and Foxwoods, whole section of grass-fed. I'm looking and I'm like, this isn't grass-fed, and they said, yes, it is, yes, it is. So when I got home, I'm like looking at the menu again, and I start calling the ranchers. I'm like, so Tom says he's buying your grass-fed beef. Like, we don't have grass-fed beef. I'm like, well, he was listing Snake River too as grass-fed. At the time, Snake River did not have grass-fed. I think they since launched their grass-fed. And these guys are like, we don't have grass-fed beef. Tom mislabeled that. And so I called him out in a video, American Grass-Fed Association. I'm like, what do we do about people like this? Like, Marcus, make a video and blast it out there, publicize it. So I did do that. Tom Colicchio found out because I tweeted him. And he got mad at me. He's like, I can't believe you do this. But I called the restaurant like 6 times. I spoke to the manager. I spoke to the butcher. I spoke to the kitchen manager, the chef. And they all argued with me. And the chef started harassing me on Twitter and started like changing his Twitter name. And I got all these tweets from his chef. Suppose he was a good chef. Like on Twitter, just like insulting me and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, my character and everything. But I called them and I said, man, you can't do this. You're misleading customers. This is fraud. They argued with me. So I made the video. I put it up. And Tom was like, I can't believe you did this to me. I can't believe it. You know, start crying and tweets to me and stuff. Direct messages. I can't believe you did this to me. Don't you have respect for this and have more respect for me? You should have called. I did call. I called 6 times. Your staff argued with me. And he's like, well, our Chef James is so good and this and that. So then, after they realized what they did, that I was right, they put out a tweet, thank you MGM or whoever it was for catching our mistake, our typo. I tweeted back and said, this wasn't a typo. I told you 6 months ago. You refused to change it. Then he sends me, I have all this. He sent me another tweet. I'm done playing with you. Like, you're done playing with me? No, you should be done misleading your guests. So here again, misleading guests on a menu. But then, like a year later, I went back to look at the menu because this Chef James would harass me on Twitter, and I got all these tweets saved, would just harass me. So I went back, and he said he had one tweet. He said we buy our beef directly from Japan. And this was the middle of hoof and mouth crisis, and there was no Japanese beef allowed in. Just a total tool. This guy was, James, total tool. So I went back on, and they said they buy hormone-free, antibiotic-free beefs, all that kind of stuff. And I saw CAB, Certified Angus Beef. So I was like, Certified Angus Beef doesn't have a natural program. So I go online. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess they do. But I wonder if Tom's buying it. Called up Certified Angus Beef, and I started asking questions. I know what to say. I'm just not going to say, hey, is Tom Colicchio buying this? Because they're not going to divulge that information. So I kind of said, well, who's your biggest buyers in the area? Oh, I noticed that Craft Steak has CAB. What line are they buying? So after just talking to this woman for like 5-10 minutes, she goes, Tom's one of our biggest customers. One of our biggest customers in the Northeast for Certified Angus Beef. But he doesn't buy the natural at all. He's never bought the natural from us. He's buying our commodity product, which has hormones and antibiotics and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, man, now Tom Colicchio is a tool. It's just amazing what these celebrity chefs will tell you. It's just amazing. You think you're going to eat something that's pure and natural, and they're just like, they'll tell you anything. Sorry this video is going on for so long. There's just so much to say about these tools. It drives me crazy. Whether it's a local chef or celebrity chefs like Tom Colicchio, stop the fake farm-to-table crap, these lines. Now, I'm sure some of Tom's restaurants might be doing better than some of the other ones in this. I'm sure they might be. The last time I went into one of his restaurants, I started asking questions because he actually sent a letter out. No, the Environmental Working Group sent a letter out how Tom is anti-GMO and this and that. So this is like 4 years ago. He's anti-GMO and he's your man and this and that. And he wrote the letter and everything. So I go to one of his restaurants like literally the week later. I'm like, what kind of oil you use here? They're like, canola. I'm like, is that GMO free? They're like, I don't think so. I'm like, what kind of soda do you use? And they pull out the Coke. I'm like, oh, corn syrup, probably GMO, corn syrup. I'm like, ketchup? They're like, yeah, Heinz. I'm like, oh, more corn syrup, probably GMO. I'm like, I thought Tom Colicchio was anti-GMO. And the restaurant manager came through and he goes, I didn't know we were anti-GMO. I'm like, here's the email from Environmental Working Group. Here's Tom's face in it. Here's the letter that he wrote. Here's his stance. Here's the email from Environmental Working Group. Here's Tom's face in it. Here's the letter that he wrote. Here's his stance. He's fighting for our rights to label GMO. The best way to fight for our rights to label GMO, Tom, is to stop using it yourself. That's the best way to fight for it. Set an example. Just don't go out there. If you expect other restaurants to stop using it, other people to stop using it, you need to stop using it first. That's the bottom line. Oh, man. See what drives me crazy? So, Tom Colicchio, Craft Steak, Vegas, get your act together. I'm going to be out there for the Grant Cardone 10X Growth Conference, and I'm going to be out there for my mastermind group, my restaurant mastermind group. Sorry this video is a little long. I hope you stayed through to watch the whole thing, and thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Spread this, pass this message, ask questions when you go to restaurants, ask where the food's from. If they're writing it down there, say if they're they write this disclaimers on the bottom menu, these chefs. Oh, we buy from so-and-so. No, I want to see it on your menu. Bulick Farms local mushrooms, MX Farms beets, Wheatley Farms braised brisket. I want to see it right there so people can see right then and there in each line item and not have to guess and looking down the whole menu and saying, well, what on this menu is local? What on this menu isn't local? I'm Chef Marcus Guiliano. Thanks for watching. If you like my videos, please hit like, subscribe to my channel. Check out foodfraud.com, foodfraud TV, foodfraudtv.com, truthinmenu.com.